watching Bengals Breakdown by Chat Sports, and I am your host, Stone Shields. Thank you so much for joining us for today's show. Should the Bengals trade for a defensive tackle? Obviously, that's not something that would happen prior to Bengals Monday night game against the Commanders, but if things still don't look good at that position, could the Bengals be in the market to make a trade at that spot? Would completely go against what the Bengals have done in the past, but with a really good roster and a position of need that is so high at that defensive line spot, could they, be willing to make a change and do something they don't always do? So we'll throw around a couple of names on today's show that could potentially be targets for the Cincinnati Bengals in a potential trade. Also, Daijahn Anthony had some comments this week with the media. Of course, Anthony was flagged for defensive pass interference with less than a minute to go on the road at Kansas City that ultimately allowed Harrison Butker to attempt the game-winning field goal that he, of course, made. So we'll talk about what Anthony had to say and where kind of my mindset is with those comments. And also, the Commanders' defensive coordinator had some things to say this week about the Bengals offense. We will let you know what exactly he had to say. And by the way, if you see me looking down, I am doing a little solo producing here today, so just bear with me trying to do multiple things here at once as we work our way through today's edition of Bengals Breakdown. But before we dive in, I want to invite you guys to hit that sub button if you haven't done so already. We are trying to beat our total from September 2023. Obviously, I was not the host at this point, but we're trying to beat those numbers. And as you can tell, we have some work to do. Over 300 subs are needed in order to make that happen. And feel confident that we can do that, especially with a watch party on Monday night. We might hit 300 subs off that watch party. That certainly would be exciting. But hit that sub button so you don't miss out on any of our coverage here at Bengals Breakdown. News, rumors, breaking news, you name it, we've got it here at Bengals Breakdown. So hit that sub button, youtube.com/Bengals TV. All right, so there's some pipe dreams, but I think these aren't really realistic whatsoever. And that would be really for any team, not just the Bengals, because you would really need to give up a lot to get some of these guys. Dexter Lawrence, he's an unbelievable player. I don't see him leaving the Giants. Vita Vea is banged up a little bit for the Bucs, but that team is a contender, 100%. Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield is a contender, and they're not going to, let go of a guy like Vita Vea. Jeffery Simmons, I also would be surprised if he were to be moved from Tennessee. So I don't think that's really something you can count on either. And I have Derrick Brown on this list, but Derrick Brown, of course, is actually out for the year now with his injury. So that really wouldn't do the Bengals any good there either. But Derrick Brown, of course, is really one of the only bright spots on that Carolina team. And, of course, he got hurt. So really just unfortunate what the Panthers are dealing with. But those are some, pipe dreams, some names, big names, but nobody that the Bengals would essentially be able to go out and add to their roster. I don't think really anybody, even a team that isn't quite as conservative as the Bengals, would be able to add any of these guys. These are just very much pipe dreams. But when you look at what the Bengals have right now on the interior of their defensive line, Sheldon Rankins and B.J. Hill, those guys haven't been practicing. One, they haven't been great, period. But, the fact that they haven't even been practicing, they've got those hamstrings that they're dealing with, that certainly isn't a good sign at all, because the guys behind them, you don't really have a ton of confidence in those guys. Zach Carter hasn't really brought anything to the table for you. Jay Tufele, he had some moments against Kansas City for sure. And then you're banking on a 34-year-old guy, Lawrence Guy, to come in and, help out your football team. So we'll see what kind of impact he has, if any, on Monday Night Football against the Commanders. So we'll see what his role looks like. Chris Jenkins has had that thumb issue. He's been coming back a little bit slowly but surely. I don't know. As of filming, his status for Monday night's game is up in the air. We will see if that changes. Didn't have the best preseason by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly, a resource that the Bengals allocated towards high in that draft, picking him in the second round. So the Bengals hope to have some help there from Jenkins. But really, this room is really, really beat up at this point, and really before they were beat up, it really just wasn't that talented of a room. So the Bengals could potentially be looking to add from the outside, more so than what they have already done with Lawrence Guy. Before we get into a couple of potential candidates, I want to invite you guys to get interactive with our show here at Bengals Breakdown with the pin comment of today's show. Name a defensive tackle you want to trade for. I told you about some of the pipe dreams. Aaron Donald, he's not a guy that, on the defensive line is going to come out of retirement. That's something that's not going to happen. But is there any realistic options out there for you guys? And I know, you guys are going to be like, oh, the Bengals never do this. I understand. But it certainly is worth talking about because you never know. They switched how they operated their business when they gave Joe Burrow his contract and how they kind of structured it. So maybe they'll do something like that and make a trade if they deem it necessary, Duke Tobin and company. But get interactive with us. Sound off in the comments of today's video. First name, DJ Jones, member of the Denver Broncos on that interior of the defensive line. Now, DJ Jones hasn't really done a ton in Denver, but when he was in San Francisco, he, made a lot of plays for that football team, and he could be a guy that the Bengals could potentially be looking towards. And I think Denver you might start to see them move some pieces here. I don't think they'll necessarily do so on the offensive side of the ball, obviously with a rookie quarterback trying to figure things out there, but I thought this team, again, it's only been 2 weeks, but I thought this team would be a little bit more competitive than what they have been to this point. And you might see him start to shop some guys. So I think DJ Jones, a little change of scenery perhaps. I think he still has a lot to give in this sport for sure. But you look at the numbers with Denver, they haven't really popped, especially nearly as much as that 2021 season with the San Francisco 49ers. So he's a guy to monitor for sure. Potential candidate that could be shopped, and the Bengals could be in the market for a guy like DJ Jones. The second guy on this list, Daijahn Robinson. Now, the name might sound familiar because he played on the Rams when the Bengals played the Rams in the Super Bowl, and he even had a sack of Joe Burrow in that game. So, obviously, that is a bad memory right there. But this guy's played a lot of football. He's had a lot of success, had some really good years with the Los Angeles Rams. What he did last year as a Giant wasn't a great season, but, as a veteran player, I think he's still has some to give, still has some of that energy left in the tank. No doubt about that in my mind with a guy like Daijahn Robinson. Now playing on the Panthers, look, the Panthers are just a complete and utter mess at this point. There really is no two ways around it. That organization is just a dumpster fire right now. So they really don't have many talented pieces on the team, period. But I think Daijahn Robinson is a guy that other teams around the league will have interest in. And if you're Carolina, Daijahn Robinson really isn't going to be able to give you much, right? You need a heck of a lot of help, and he's not going to really be a difference maker for him. You could potentially get something out of it in terms of a trade, but I just think the performance of Daijahn Robinson on the field for you, if you're Carolina, it really doesn't do a ton given just where the rest of your roster is at. So those are two names I'll float out there. DJ Jones, Daijahn Robinson. Bengals potentially could be in the market for guys like that. All right, so Daijahn Anthony made some comments. Daijahn Anthony, of course, the Bengals' 7th-round pick, one of the Bengals' 7th-round picks in the 2024 draft out of Ole Miss, defensive back. He really was a toss-up to make this football team for Cincinnati, but had a really impressive camp, a really solid preseason, and he ultimately was able to vault his way onto the roster. So I think the people that are, diehard Bengals fans appreciate this kid, but some of the people that, might just not necessarily be a diehard Bengals fan didn't really know who he was until he made that defensive pass interference on Kansas City. So he made some comments, and I'll just be upfront with you guys. Really don't think it was, the best thing to say what he had to say to the media today. Just simply me. I wouldn't have done it, and we'll dive into that here in a moment. But first, want to give a shout out to our friends over at Factor Meals because they're the sponsor of today's show. And with football season in full swing, look, guys, I don't have time to cook. That's why I use Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? Crush your wellness goals this month with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Head to factormeals.com/BengalsChat50 and use code BengalsChat50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's code BengalsChat50 when you use at factormeals.com/BengalsChat50 to get 50% off your first box and plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. So really appreciate our friends over at Factor Meals for being the sponsor of today's show. All right, let's get into this quote exactly from Daijahn Anthony when it comes to the things that he said to the media when he had the opportunity to speak with them this week. And, I will say, Daijahn Anthony seems like a great kid, and his head seems to be in the right spot. But I just don't think what he went out there and said was necessarily the exact thing that you should do as a professional. But he said, I honestly can't wait to see them. I got him as one of my lock screens right now so I could see it every day, both of them. Yeah, because I can't wait to see them again. One of my lock screens on my phone, I got like a slideshow, and I could just click through like family members, and then they're on there too. So if that's not, making any sense to you guys, basically he's got Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes as one of the lock screens on his phone. Now, if that's something that you got to do to use it as a motivational factor, fine. But to go out there and tell the media that, come on. That's something that you just need to keep to yourself, I think. I don't think there's any reason to go out there and let the public masses know that that's what you're doing. I mean, look, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are just laughing at that 100%. He's talking, and a lot of the Bengals are already talking about seeing these guys down the road. Look, I think the Bengals are a good enough team to meet Kansas City in the playoffs, 100%, but this team's still looking for their first victory of 2024. Daijahn Anthony hasn't experienced a win in the NFL yet at this point. And he's sitting there talking about, we're going to play these guys down the road in the playoffs. Like, I just think, look, you take it on the chin. You made a mistake. I love what he had to say about his teammates picking him up. I think that shows kind of what the, Zach Taylor's locker room looks like. That's great that the coaches and players have had his back. But I think, look, it is a bit too much, in my opinion, to go say that to the media. I just don't think that's something you should, air out there. Because, if the Bengals do end up, playing Kansas City down the line, this is going to get brought back up. And it's like, really, like, it just, to me, seems a little, it seems a little childish, to be completely honest with you. And, again, he is a rookie, so these things happen. But, I don't imagine Joe Burrow coming out and saying that he's got that on his lock screen. Like, that's just something that wouldn't come out of Joe Burrow's mouth. So, really appreciate the way that Daijahn Anthony has handled, what's transpired on Sunday against the Chiefs. But probably should have just kept that one to himself, in my opinion. But I want to know what you guys think. What is your one-word reaction to Daijahn Anthony's comments? One word. Give it to us in the comment section of today's show. Are you with me? Do you think he kind of just should have, kept that aspect to himself? Or are you like, no, it's fine that he put that out there? Let us know. Get interactive with our show. Sound off in the comments of today's video. All right, let's get to this post from JP Finlay about some of the things that the Bengals or that the Commanders' defensive coordinator had to say about the Bengals offense. He said, going into Cincy, it all starts with the quarterback. He's just a really good player. It's a challenge because he's got outstanding weapons on the outside. And then this is the part that really caught my attention. I don't think Chase gets the credit he deserves in this league. And I agree with that statement. Unfortunately for Jamar Chase, some other things have, taken away from the things that he is able to do out on the football field. One, the contract thing that went on for, all of training camp and felt like a lot of the offseason as well. And then the play in Kansas City where he goes and just completely loses his mind and chases down the official. And then you're in a spot where it's like, well, I mean, what are we doing, Jamar? You know what I mean? Like, that, you can't be doing those things as a professional. But I don't think people understand exactly what defenses throw at Jamar Chase. Because when you look at his numbers, it's like, well, he hasn't done a ton this year. But all the things that they are throwing at Jamar, all the resources that they are allocating towards Jamar make things really difficult for him. So just kind of thought it was a really good point by the Commanders defensive coordinator to kind of put that out there like, hey, this is still a top 2-3 wide receiver in the National Football League. The numbers might not say that at this point, but Jamar Chase is without a doubt a player of a really, really high caliber. And I think, it was nice to hear that from the Commanders defensive coordinator. And, hopefully Jamar can eventually get things going from a stats perspective, and we can see him, in the end zone and making big plays and things like that. But, just because he hasn't put up big numbers so far this year doesn't mean defenses aren't doing everything in their, power to try to limit him in football games. And I thought it was a really good point by the Washington defensive coordinator. All right, before we get out of here, I want to remind you guys to follow me on Twitter. We're trying to get to 500 followers by the end of the month. I think we're at like 420-something right now. So we got a bit of a ways to go over these next 10 or so days. So help me out. Follow me over on Twitter at StoneShields_. All of our Bengals breakdown content will be posted to my Twitter page. So don't miss out. Give me a follow over on Twitter.